Well, good afternoon, everybody. So welcome to Kings Mountain National Military Park for those of you who just arrived, and welcome back to those of you who are with us this morning at the wreath ceremony. My name is Diana Bramble. I'm the superintendent for a group of parks that commemorate the Southern Campaign of the American Revolution, which includes Kings Mountain National Military Park and the Overmountain Victory National Historic Trail. So thank you for joining us this afternoon. We're here to commemorate the March of the Overmountain Men and the events that took place here at Kings Mountain National Military Park 242 years ago. Before we get started with this afternoon's program, I just wanted to share a few housekeeping notes. So if everybody could please silence their cell phones and turn the volume down on your radios, that will greatly help with minimizing distraction. If you have an emergency or a question, please reach out to the closest person in green and gray. They look a little bit like me. We're here to help. There are about 18 of us around, so be safe and enjoy the program. So at the time of the Southern Campaign, the British Army had set its sights on the Southern colonies. And meanwhile, the Continental Army was suffering numerous defeats. It was not looking so great. They were preparing, the British Army was preparing to move troops through North Carolina and Virginia, and they had all the reason to believe that this would be a crushing blow to the American Revolution. And what you have to remember is that this region at the time was really the colonial frontier. It was under a very real threat. The settlers of that frontier, they came together to face that threat, and they marched over 330 miles for 2 weeks to chase down Patrick Ferguson at Kings Mountain, right here. Their victory here changed the entire trajectory of the American Revolution. Now, I stated a few seconds ago, that a battle took place here 242 years ago. Let that sink in. It's a really long time. The patriots that won that battle and that pivotal victory allowed our nation as we know it to form. Because of the extraordinary efforts of brave people, we are here today. We're able to share the story of the Overmountain Men and the events leading up to the Battle of Kings Mountain with thousands of people. And I mean thousands. And that's because of the extraordinary efforts of some determined and most definitely not so ordinary people. The members of the Overmountain Victory Trail Association are a dedicated group of volunteers, and they've been on the trail at historic sites associated with the March of the Overmountain Men for 3 weeks now, sharing that story with the local communities. We're very grateful for all that they do. I also want to offer my sincere and heartfelt thanks to the team here at Kings Mountain National Military Park for pulling together the programs, preparing the grounds, and making this happen today. It really is a team effort. A lot goes into making this happen for all of you. We're really happy that you're all here to share in this with us. And these guys just do a great job. So thank you, everybody, for your work and getting us here today. So what happened here at Kings Mountain is a big part of our nation's history. And we are here to share that with you right now. So on with the show. At 9 p.m. last night, October 6th, the Overmountain Men left the cow pens to make their way to Kings Mountain. At 3 p.m. on October 7th, they came up the mountain and over a ridge, and the battle was on.
Good afternoon. As you know, the Revolutionary War lasted a long 8 years. The first 3 years of that battle was up north. There was a lot of things up there not going well. Washington lost a third of his army at New York. The Boston went okay to get the British out, but things weren't going very well, and it was at a stalemate. Now, the British thought they need to come down south. And the problem with coming down south, the governors, the royal governors down here in the Carolinas and Georgia told the British that we were all loyalists down here. But that was only to get the military down here to keep them in power. And we weren't all loyalists down here, but the British thought that, so they came up with something called the Southern Strategy. And the Southern Strategy was to come down and find a big, nice port where they could supply everything. And so they came down to Charleston. They spent some time on it, but they did conquer Charleston. It cost them a lot, but it cost the American Army more than it cost the British, because we lost the Southern Army. We lost 6,000 men down there. They took 6,000 Charleville muskets away from the Patriots and imprisoned everybody, and they treated the surrender pretty poorly. And that's kind of important when it comes back to Yorktown. So they came down and took over Charleston, thought they had a good deal here. They're going to just march up and overrun both Carolinas and then conquer Virginia. Because the British were having trouble with Virginia. They owned the eastern side of Virginia, but not the back side. So Cornwallis says, well, if we're going to do that, I need to split the army in 3 pieces. I'm going to take the main army from Charleston right up to Charlottetown. And he sends Patrick Ferguson, which you've heard about, he sends him up the East Coast to gather up the loyalists to join the army and to run the Patriots out and to confiscate anything from the Patriots. And then on the west, he got Major Patrick Ferguson, a Scotsman, and sent him out to conquer the back country. So he leads out down there with orders to enlist all of the young unmarried men. See, the people that they thought maybe they wouldn't miss if it didn't go well. So he went out with only 100 men, a lot of wagons, a lot of supplies, 300 Charleville muskets from the captured Americans, and he lit out for the back country. He did pretty good, because when an army comes through, it made the loyalists feel better, and he was enlisting people. When he came through the back country, he had actually enlisted over 1,000 men coming north. So now going through the back country, he was running out the Patriots. He was taking whatever was on the Patriot farm, burning the farm, burning the crops, and just sweeping the Patriots in front of him north. And he had several battles on the way coming up here. But when he got up into North Carolina, he stopped at Gilberttown, nice lush area there, and he set up shop. And all of the Patriots in the area had gone out. Now then he sent a crew, himself and several, up to try to capture McDowell. Because McDowell was just right up the road, and McDowell had been a thorn in the side of the British for a long time. So they march up the Cane Creek Road. They said they had to cross that little crooked creek 9 times in 1 mile to get up there. When they got up towards the head of Cane Creek on their way to capture McDowell, they found McDowell was waiting with 160 men from Burke and Rutherford County, and they ambushed him. So the Patriots ambushed the Loyalists, a very sharp battle. not very decisive. The Patriots got away, but they got 9 horses and some guns and a few prisoners, and they shot a few of the Patriots, and a few of the British were shot. And then he comes back towards Gilberttown. Those 160 men that ambushed Ferguson, they went over the mountain. They just followed over, across the mountain, went to the Holston settlement. Now, Ferguson's getting pretty upset. He can't catch these guys. No matter how hard he tries, he can't catch them. They just stay in front of him and ambush a little bit. So he sends a message. He gets one of the men that he had captured, and he pardons him if he'll take a message to his cousin over the mountain. And so he sent a message over the mountain and said, if you men don't come over here, swear allegiance to the king, join my army and help put down this rebellion, I'm going to come over there with fire and sword. I'm going to destitute your land, destitute your women and children, and I'm going to hang your leaders. Well, they didn't like that. He thought they were such low life, banditti, he called them, that they would cower and come over. Well, they didn't. They started rounding up troops. They rounded up all the troops on that side of the mountain. They went to Virginia and asked Colonel Campbell up in Virginia for some troops. But Campbell had another problem. His goal was to protect all of Virginia, and he had Dunlap and a really sizable army on his east coast, and he was in trouble. He didn't know if he could keep Virginia safe, so he only sent 200 troops down. Well, they went over and talked to him and said, you know, if we lose down here, there's nothing to stop this British army to come on right up in here. If we lose this battle with Ferguson, Cornwallis is going to walk right into Virginia, and you're going to have Cornwallis on one side and Dunlap on the other, and you're not going to be able to hold it. He saw the reasoning of that, and so he sent more troops. So troops are coming in and Sycamore Shoals, and got to be a pretty good army. They're feeling pretty confident. So they round up some beef and they start the march out. And there was a local minister there, Reverend Doak. Reverend Doak was quite a good speaker, and they asked him to come over and give them a blessing on the way. And so I want to introduce a gentleman to talk about Reverend Doak.
My name is Thomas Price. When I was only 14 years old, Colonel John Sevier requested that I become his personal fifer because I was so well known for my skills at that time. I accepted and later joined, went on many Indian campaigns, and later I was old enough to join the militia as a regular soldier. I was there on the banks of the Watauga River at the Sycamore Shoals on the 25th of September, and I was able to get close enough to Reverend Samuel Doak to hear well enough that I can now recount what he said. He said, "My country, you are about to set out on an expedition which is filled with hardship and danger, but one in which the Almighty will attend you. The mother country has her hands upon you, these American colonies, and takes that which our fathers planted their homes in the wilderness, our liberty. Taxation without representation, and the quartering of soldiers in the homes of our people without their consent are evidence that the Crown of England would take from its American subjects the last vestige of freedom. Brave men, you are not unacquainted with battle. Your hands already have been taught to war and your fingers to fight. You have breasted the beautiful valleys of the Holston and the Watauga, from the savage hand. Will you tarry now, while the other enemy carries fire and sword to your very door?
No!
No, it shall not be. Go forth then, in the strength of your manhood, to the aid of your brethren, the defense of your liberty, and the protection of your homes. And may the God of justice go with you and give you victory. Let us pray. Almighty and gracious God, Thou hast been the strength and refuge of Thy people in all ages. In times of sorest need, we have learned to come to Thee, our rock and our fortress. Thou knowest the dangers and snares that surround us on marching in battle. Thou knowest the dangers that constantly threaten the humble, but well-beloved homes which Thy servants have left behind them. Oh, in Thine infinite mercy, save us from the cruel hand of the savage and the tyrant. Save the unprotected homes, while fathers, husbands, and sons are far away fighting for liberty and helping the oppressed. Thou who promised to protect the sparrow in its flight, keep ceaseless watch by day and by night over our loved ones. The helpless women, the little children, we commit to Thy care. Thou wilt not leave them or forsake them in times of loneliness, anxiety, and terror. O God of battle, arise in Thy might, avenge the slaughter of Thy people. Confound those who plot for our destruction. Crown this mighty effort in victory and smite those who exalt themselves against liberty, justice, and truth. Help us, as good soldiers, to wield the sword of the Lord and of Gideon. Amen.
Well, Reverend Doak gave a very inspiring sermon, and he got everybody all fired up. Now, every military organization at that time, when they set off on a campaign, they'd take along a lot of beef because they knew they had to eat along the way, forage and have enough beef. But when they got up on the mountain, they found out that was slowing them down pretty far. So they sent the beef back after slaughtering enough of them to feed them for several days, and they fired a volley, making sure everybody's gun was working. They had, by the way, gone to the tax people for North Carolina and said, we need money for supplies. And the tax guy said, well, if you lose this, English are going to get this money, so take it. So that helped pay for the thing. So basically we had an army from Virginia, we had an army from North Carolina, and we're going to go get an army from South Carolina. And so the men lit out with the 500 pounds of powder, and believe me, it's hard to keep 500 pounds of powder dry, but it was in lead casks, lead-lined casks, so they did keep it dry. They headed out over the mountain, and when they got up on to where there's two trails coming down, they periodically made sure they still had everybody, and they found two guys missing. But these two guys that were missing were kind of known to be loyalist-leaning. So they figured, well, these guys might be out to warn Ferguson that we're coming, because they would get rewarded by Ferguson. If they stayed with us, they might lose in the battle. So they figured that might happen, so we got to hurry up. That put an urgency on this whole thing. And they found out kind of where Ferguson was, and so they headed out, and there's two trails coming down off the mountains. But if they went down one, Ferguson might sneak up the other one, and that would be pretty bad. Their trails were close enough, if they were hearing firing on one, the rest could come over to there. But they got down off of there, and they got over to Colonel McDowell's plantation, and were treated very, very well there, and got their first real good meals in a while. And I'm going to turn this over now to talk about from there on.
My name is James Withrow, captain of the Rutherford County Militia. I've been with the Overmountain Men for a while. We'd been run out of our homestead by Ferguson as he was going up Cane Creek. When we get to Colonel McDowell's home, we were treated to a good meal. His wife graciously allowed us to take the top rail off of her fence so that we could build fires. See, it had been raining a lot on us on this trip. We would like to dry it out. We tried. During our stay there, as brief as it was, we got word that Ferguson and his army was at Gilberttown still. That was only a couple of days' ride. So we saddled up, crossed the Catawba River, and rode for Gilberttown. But as we got closer and closer, the skies really opened up on us. It poured. We had to stop. Tried to stay as dry as we could under a bit of cedar trees. But eventually, as it let up, we attacked. We tied our horses up in the tree line. We knew where his camp was. We went screaming into this field. Ferguson was gone. He and his men had left what best we could count was a couple of days. But we then had a problem. With all that rain, even our best scouts couldn't tell us where Ferguson had gone. We couldn't know which way. There was a commander from South Carolina by the name of Williams. He said that Ferguson and his army, he's going to go back to Fort 96. That's that big British outpost in the western frontier of South Carolina. Made sense to us, so we took off riding. A day or so later, we're at Alexander's Ford on the Green River. We still haven't found any trace of an army. We were starting to get discouraged. That night, there's a ruckus. I mean, a big ruckus. There's a madman who had ridden into our camp all by himself. Some of the guys thought that they had caught a spy. They drug him out of his saddle, and he said, "I'm Colonel Edward Lacey of the South Carolina Militia. I need to speak to your leaders." So they put the rope down. Some of them were planning on hanging him. So they put the rope down, took him to our colonels. Sure enough, they recognized him as Colonel Edward Lacey. And he said, "Which way are y'all headed?" And they said, "We're going after Ferguson. He's headed toward 96, and we're right off. We got to fight him." Colonel Lacey said, "I don't know where you get your information from. You're headed in the wrong direction. Ferguson and his army, they're headed back toward Charlottetown, where Cornwallis is. He's looking to get reinforcements." Now we knew we were in real trouble. If he got there to Charlottetown first, every one of us would sign our own death warrant. Lacey says, "I've got some militia and I can get some more. I'll meet you tomorrow at a place called the Cowpens." We knew where the Cowpens were. So he rides off, and we ride off in the rain. 30 miles from Alexander's Ford to the Cowpens. Now, I don't know what y'all think about when you think of the Cowpens. One thing was on our mind, there might be food. See, we hadn't had a good meal since the McDowells. We get to the Cowpens, and we knew there was some meat there. Matter of fact, this Cowpen was owned by a loyalist. And Reverend Doak, he had preached to these men. They were talking about it, that people, the Lord will help those who help themselves. So some of our guys decided to help themselves to Hannah's beef. That was a good meal. We didn't think he would mind, because every one of us is carrying a rifle. That night, our leaders met, formed a plan, got to make a final push. Lacey said that Ferguson's over there on the King's Mountain on the Charlotte Road. Our leaders went from campfire to campfire, picked the 900 best men and the 900 best horses. They took off at 9 o'clock in the rain. They went along. I went with them since I was from that neck of the woods. They asked me to go along. We get to the Broad River, and with all that rain, the Broad River was flooding. We knew we had to cross it, so we put our best men on the strongest horses a little bit downstream, hoping that they could catch whoever might get washed out of their saddle in the flood. We made it across. That morning, sun comes up. We're on the road, but we just need to get some better information. We come up on a little house. Now, we had a guy with us. His name was Enoch Gilmore. He was a little guy. Enoch said, I've got an idea. Let me go up to that house, and I'll find out where Ferguson is. So Enoch strutted off. Gets on that door, tries to look as mean as he can, and knocks on that door. Lady opens the door and says, can I help you? And he goes, my name is Enoch Gilmer. I'm looking for Ferguson. At least this is what he tells us afterwards. He says, I'm looking to join Ferguson's army. The lady says, well, I know right where he is. He's on Kings Mountain. I just took him some eggs this morning for breakfast. Well, we had figured Enoch had had enough time. Some of the guys go up there and charge in and say, this traitor, we need to hang him. Now, the women start to squalling. Say, don't hang this little boy. He hasn't done anything. And they're like, nope, we're going to hang him. And one of the guys says, well, you know what? We don't need to offend the women. Let's take him down the road and we'll hang him down there. And that's what they do. They ride off. Come back to where we are. And they ask Enoch, Enoch, where's Ferguson? He goes, he's on Kings Mountain. So we get back in the saddle and we keep going. About lunchtime, some of the men start to slow down. They start saying, we need to rest. And one of the commanders comes up and says, rest? I will not rest until I ride my horse through Cornwallis' lines. Well, that shamed them, and we keep going. About 2 o'clock, by the grace of God, it stops raining, and we're at the foot of Kings Mountain. We tie our horses up, leave some of the young men to make sure those horses don't run away. Half the group goes around one side of the mountain, the other half comes around the other. We have Ferguson surrounded. At 3 o'clock, the first volley is fired, and we charge up that mountain. Now, we've been told by one of the commanders, be your own captain. So we did. We charged up from tree to rock, from rock to tree. But Ferguson had trained his men well. We were met by a bayonet charge. We can't stand that, so we went back down the mountain, gathered ourselves back up, charged up. Second time. Got a little closer, but there were those bayonets again. Drive us back down the mountain. Third time, some of our men had remembered how we had fought the Cherokee. Cherokee would come out screaming at the top of their lungs. And that's what we did. The third time, we went up that mountain, rock to tree, tree to rock, screaming, and we took that hill. Now, at this point, some of Ferguson's men are beginning to think, it's not looking too good for us. I'd rather surrender than get killed. So they start putting up little white handkerchiefs. And Ferguson, he's on this white horse, checkered shirt, sword. He's got whistles. You couldn't miss him. He comes along and he's cutting down every flag that he can see. Now I'm over on one side of the mountain, and he heads back the other way because there's some more men trying to surrender. I don't know. Some of the guys said he was trying to escape. Some said he was trying to rally his troops. All I know is he got a little too close to those men from Tennessee, or North Carolina, I should call it. They like to call it Tennessee sometimes, but I know it's North Carolina. They get a little too close. There was one young man I was told afterwards, he raised his rifle up, said, I've got Ferguson now, and he takes aim and goes click. He misfires. There was a man standing next to him by the name of Robert Young. He's 62 years old, so I guess he wasn't that young. But as he said, he's standing there, he says, well, let me see what I can do. well, that's a paraphrase. What I learned later is, he said, let me see what my rifle can do. I've named my rifle after my wife. Her name was Mary, I understand. But that's not what he called his rifle. He called it Sweet Lips. He takes careful aim, and when he pulled that trigger, bang, Ferguson comes right out of the saddle. Now, that spooked his horse, and unfortunately, he starts to get drugged. By the time we stop his horse, Ferguson's got 8 more holes in him, and that horse is untouched. Shows you what a guy with a rifle can do. The battle's over. It's about an hour and 5 minutes we've been fighting. We go up and count the dead, gather the wounded. This is probably the hardest thing I ever had to do. See, on top of that mountain, most everybody was fighting in their normal clothes. We were all militia. The only way you could tell each other apart, one had paper, the Patriots had paper. Those Loyalists had pine straw, and I found someone that I recognized. He said, help, I'm dying. Give me some water. And I see that he's got some pine straw in his hair, in his hat. And I say, look now to your friends for aid. And I left him there. He dies. Of course, I had to go home and tell my wife that I had left her brother to die on Kings Mountain. Yeah, that was some rough fighting up there. But as we gather our men up and we start taking the prisoners down, every one of them of Ferguson's army we killed or captured. There was a young man who had been helping hold the horses, and I spoke a word to him because I said, I had gotten to know the family. I said, you probably need to go up the mountain. There's some business you have to attend to. And I'll let him tell that story.
My name's James Sevier, son of John Sevier. When the threat crossed the mountains from Patrick Ferguson and we knew he was coming, there was a lot of debate on what was going to happen and what we were going to do. But there was a whole lot more debate in the home of us Seviers. When the threat crossed the mountains, I was 15 years old. I wouldn't have turned 16 until October 25th. And at that time, you weren't required to be part of the militia until the age of 16. But I was desperate to go. I wanted to catch this bloody Ferguson. And just as much as any man on that mountain, I wanted to see him dead. So they let me ride with them. I rode with them from Fort Watauga to the side of this mountain where we're standing today. Because I was a little bit younger, they assigned me what they called an easier job. They said, when the battle starts, stand down here and hold the horses. So I stood at the bottom of the mountain. A couple other boys my age, we got a good tight grip on the reins, waited for anything. When the first shot was fired, bang! Horses jumped up off the ground, pinned their ears back. They didn't know what was going on. Neither did I. I'd never seen a battle like this before. So I fought with the horses while the battle was going on, and about halfway through, the gun smoke got so thick you couldn't even see the men on the mountain, but you could hear every shot fired, and you could hear the screams and the yells of every wounded man. I fought with those horses for an hour and 5 minutes, and by the time we were through, the sulfur was so thick, their eyes had begun to water. When the battle was over, the men came down to try to relieve me for a little bit. They came down and I went up to count the wounded. Myself and my father John made it up to the mountain and found my uncle there, Robert Sevier. He was lying there wounded. One of the medics on the mountain said if he stayed right where he was at, he at least had a fair chance at recovery. And it was then that he said something I'll never forget. He said, and if I'm caught on this side of the mountain by any Tory, I'll be hung right here. And I realized that where I came from, my name was respectable, just as much as any other. But as soon as you cross the mountain, the name Sevier is wanted by every British soldier and any Tory. Uncle Robert wanted to go back to where he had lived and on his farm. So me and a couple of the boys from the regiment, a group of soldiers we'd come over with, saddled him up and started back home. Made it just across the hill to a little place called Davenport Springs. And my Uncle Robert succumbed to his wounds there. And left me there to bury him. And he's still buried there today. He was just one of the patriots on the side of the mountain. He wasn't killed and he didn't make it home. He made it halfway. But he made it back to his little mountain where he wanted to be. And I saw to it that he was planted right where he wanted to be. And he's still buried there today. And now you have seen that Captain Robert Sevier fell at the Battle of Kings Mountain. He was a prudent officer, a stranger to fear, and zealous in his country's cause for liberty. And Sparta has never raised a greater group of fighting men than these that we call the Overmountain Men.
Stage or on the stage, that's your call. We'll introduce yourselves.
Ladies and gentlemen, this program has been brought to you by the Overmountain Victory Trail Association. Our goal is to keep this story alive. This is the 48th march we've had. First one began in 1975. 2 more years we're going to have our 50th, and we're going to have a big celebration for that. So get ready, tell all your friends, get it in your calendars, and let everybody know we want a big turnout. So, that being said, my name is David Doan. I'm president of the organization. I'm also Grand Marshal, and I am from the Holston Settlement in a little place called Blumpville, Tennessee. We like to say that Blumpville is the hub of the Tri-Cities, and the Tri-Cities are the suburbs of Blumpville. And Colonel Shelby is my commander.
My name is Dean Morgan. I'm also from the Watauga Settlement. This is my 5th year on the march.
My name is Mark Anthony from the backcountry of South Carolina. I've done the second half of the march for nearly 10 years, and this is the first year I've done the entire march.
My name is Zeke Wells. It's my first time on the march and my first time at Kings Mountain. So hello.
My name's Dan Hopping. I'm from Raleigh, North Carolina, and my ancestor lived halfway between the battle and Gilberttown and was in the battle.
Bill DeBenedetto, Raleigh, North Carolina. It's my 5th year on the march.
Jane Doan, Holston Settlement, what's now Tennessee. I've been on the march several years now. I started out to honor my grandfathers that I know were here, but the more I find out about the stories of the women and the children that were left behind, I'm firing today to honor them just as well.
My name's Steve Ricker. I'm from Greenville, Tennessee. I'm the Director of Interpretation for the Overmountain Victory Trail. Been doing this march since 1780.
I'm J.D. Burleson. I'm from Thomasville, North Carolina, and this is my first year on the trail, and I want to tell you I've learned a lot.
My name's Cohen Daniels. I'm from the Nola Chunky Settlement, what's now Limestone, Tennessee. I had many patriots that fought here at Kings Mountain. One of my favorites was Mary Patton, who made the gunpowder. And I started out because it was fun, but now that I know that there was all sorts of children who served as soldiers here, I really want to honor them.
My name is Gordon Sisk. I'm a retired educator from Knoxville, Tennessee. This is my 4th year on the march. I'm here honoring my 2 5th-grade uncles who came from Wilkes, Surrey County, with being Cleveland, and one of those great uncles, Daniel Sisk, fell at the battle.
Gordon Sisk has been doing this for years in the classroom.
My name is Elisa Doan. I am from Blumpville, Tennessee. I'm joining the march this year from Michigan. This is the first year I've gone all the way from Abington to Kings Mountain, but I've been on portions of the march for several years.
My name is Alden Wade. I'm from Greenville, Tennessee, and this is my 5th year on the march.
My name's Ivan Daniels. I'm from Limestone, Tennessee. I'm 15 years old, the same age James Sevier was when he came here to this battle. I'm happy to be here.
I'm Tanya Katzen. I'm from the Clinch River Valley area in Idson, Tennessee, and I've been doing the march for 5 years.
I'm Shirley Toller, and I'm from Branson, Missouri, and I've been on the march for 18 years, and the Sevier family was my relative. John was my great uncle, and Abraham, his brother, was my grandfather.
Tennessee. This is my 17th year doing the march, and you heard about some of my famous ancestors, Robert Young and Mary Patton.
I'm Bill Walters from Branson, Missouri. I've been supporting this march for 17 years.
My name is Scott Kennedy. I'm from Raleigh, North Carolina. My people came from Cullion Castle from Scotland, 1628. My ancestors were here to fight in the battle.
Excuse me. My name is Albert Dale. I live at Dysersville, which is the halfway point of the march. This is my 25th year.
We have one more person in the audience. He is very well known. He is a world-renowned photographer. He is the official OVTA photographer.
Gosh, I was looking around and see who's talking about.
I'll take my $500 now.
I thought you said 20. I'm Tim Massey from Greenville, Tennessee, and if I counted right, this is my 25th year on the mountain on October 7th.
Tom, you want me to just introduce you? You want me to come up there? I'll come up there. Meet me halfway.
On from what was Fincastle County, Virginia.
Right? How come you didn't come down here anyway?
Get that bunch over behind you.
I'm Brian Lindsay from Daniel Morgan's town, just up the road, which was where McDowell's lived and provided the fence post. Very grateful to be with you all today, and I've been working with the OVTA at this point for probably 10 to 15 years. Thank you.
Young man, what's your name? Where are you from?
My name's Daniel Hobbs. I am from Morristown, Tennessee.
Elizabeth Hobbs from Morristown, Tennessee.
Emmett Hobbs from Morristown, Tennessee.
And Doug Hobbs from Morristown, Tennessee.
The lady right there next to Dalton and next to Gordon, that's my daughter. This is another daughter, so Mel was trying to take care of me so I didn't get in trouble. I didn't see him come in, really.
Hey, Dad. Dad. Oh, my God. Wow. Look at that.
Well, don't throw her down.
I recognize that hat anywhere. Yep.
Hi, I'm Lee Van Blarken from TGK, and I had 8, I keep finding more ancestors at Kings Mountain. And I did the march for about 15 years when I could fit into my clothes. Now I just have my hat. So